Welcome to Andy Staples on 3. It is a Tuesday night. It is a college football playoff ranking reveal night, but it is that one each year where they sandwich it between two basketball games. And so our show runs on the On3 Sports YouTube channel at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. It will not have been revealed by the time our show runs. So we've put together a wonderful show for you, but we will be talking about the rankings. If you want to hear what I have to say about the rankings, there's a couple ways to do it. First of all, On3 is partnering with Bleacher Report. I will be on the Bleacher Report live show as the rankings are being revealed with my buddy Michael Felder. And we're going to be talking about all of that stuff. So you can watch that on the Bleacher Report app or on Max, formerly HBO Max. So this is my streaming service debut will be Tuesday night. So you can watch that there when the rankings are revealed around 9 p.m. Eastern Time, so right as this show's ending. Also, I will be adding to this show in podcast form. So if you're not already subscribed to the podcast feed, what are you waiting for? We're on every major podcast platform, Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, you name it. So just type in Andy Staples on 3, subscribe to it, and it'll be in your phone on Wednesday morning when you wake up. And you can hear everything I have to say about the CFP rankings. I'm going to predict that Georgia jumps to number 1. We'll see if I'm right about that. If you're listening in podcast form, you already know the answer to this. So you can laugh at me if I'm wrong. But I think Georgia moves to number 1. But that's how you do it. Subscribe to the podcast. Check us out on Max or on the Bleacher Report app. It's going to be a lot of fun. You know who else is having fun right now? Oregon fans. You know why? Because they're keeping their coach. Texas A&M fired Jimbo Fisher the other day. Dan Lanning, the Oregon coach, top of the list. And let me tell you something about how we do these lists. When I make a hot board for a coaching search, it's not everybody I think will take the job. It's a mix of people who I think will want the job that maybe the school's not going to call, or maybe they are going to call them, and the people who I definitely think the school will inquire about whether they want the job or not. Because sometimes you don't know. You know, I go back to a couple of years ago, none of us thought that Lincoln Riley was going to leave Oklahoma, and he goes to USC, and then a few hours later, Brian Kelly is leaving Notre Dame to go to LSU. A month before that, none of us would have predicted either of those two moves. So you got to throw the names out there you think the school's going to inquire about. Dan Lanning was the first name that came to mind for Texas A&M. If you're Texas A&M, if you're Ross Bjork, the AD, if you're among the people making that decision, you're looking at pedigrees, you're looking at achievements. Dan Lanning is the obvious choice. That doesn't necessarily mean you can get him. And Dan Lanning made it abundantly clear on Monday that he ain't going anywhere.
Program. I guess the reality here is, one, my name and our program would never be in a topic of conversation for another school if we didn't have something here that everybody else wanted. And the reason we have something here that everybody else wants, that's because of what our players, our coaches, the support that exists here at Oregon have created. I think I've been really, really clear here since day one. Everything I want exists right here. I'm not going anywhere. There's zero chance that I would be coaching somewhere else. I've got unfinished business here. There's a lot that I want to accomplish here at Oregon. My number one priority is being elite here at Oregon. And we have the resources, the tools. Anybody that can't understand why you would want to be here at this place doesn't understand exactly what exists here, right? Like what I've said before, with a 13-year-old, a 12-year-old, and a 10-year-old, to be able to raise your family in a community like this, to be able to compete for championships and have the ability to get the resources you need. You know, a lot of coaches hang on to these moments and they don't do anything or don't say anything. One, because they don't want egg on their face when they decide to do something else, right? Two, because they're concerned about things that I'm not concerned about, like getting a better contract. Like, I'm taken care of extremely well here at Oregon. I have the resources I need here at Oregon to be really, really successful. I'm not motivated by that. I'm motivated by winning. I'm motivated by being elite here. And our players deserve my complete focus. Our fans deserve the best product on the field. So it's outside noise. It didn't matter before. It doesn't matter now. I'll continue to say it till I'm blue in the face. I want to be here at Oregon. That hasn't changed. That won't change.
He didn't just say he was staying. He cut a damn promo that the WWE would be proud of. that becomes a great recruiting pitch for Oregon. Now, here's the thing about this. If conference realignment didn't happen, I don't know that he says it that way. But Oregon's going to the Big Ten. Oregon does have lots of resources. Oregon has a great collective in Division Street, taking care of the NIL part of it. And they're in the Big Ten. The job Oregon will be when the conference switch happens is better than Texas A&M right now. I know what you're thinking if you're saying Texas A&M, they have all this money. Yes, they have all this money. Yes, they're located near more recruits. Yes, they're in the SEC. But here's the thing. If you're trying to figure out, do I have a good job, a job that I should stay at, or should I look around? There's a few questions you should ask. Question number one. This is the first question starting in 2024. Is my job in the Big Ten or the SEC? If the answer is yes, we can move to question two. If the answer is no, then yeah, you're probably going to consider moving to something in the SEC or the Big Ten. So the answer is yes for Dan Lanning. His job's in the Big Ten. The next question you need to ask is, can I finish regularly in the top 3 in my conference if I'm in the Big Ten or the SEC? Because if you can answer yes to that, you have a great job and you should not go anywhere. Maybe if Alabama or Ohio State called, maybe. But you probably shouldn't leave. You're probably in a great spot. So if you're Dan Lanning, you ask that question. Can I finish regularly in the top 3 of the Big Ten as it will be constituted in 2024? The answer to that is yes. Oregon's played for the national title twice since 2010. They've won multiple Pac-12 titles. They have access to players, even though there aren't a lot nearby. They've been great at recruiting nationwide. This goes back to the way Nike marketed them. It really goes back to Mike Bellotti and company and figuring out how to make them a nationwide brand. But that O, everybody knows what that O means, whether you're in Miami, whether you're in Portland, Oregon, whether you're in Los Angeles, whether you're in Boston. Everybody knows what that O means. They can go anywhere and get players. Texas A&M is a really good job, but for whatever reason, Texas A&M has never been able to get over the hump. They've not been able to compete for national titles. Oregon has been able to compete for national titles recently. It's a better job if it's in the Big Ten. If the Pac-12 had stayed together, different story. Different story. Dan Lanning might entertain an SEC offer or a Big Ten offer at that point. But now he has the better job because he can answer yes to those two questions. Is the job in the Big Ten or the SEC? Yes. Can I finish in the top 3 in my league on a regular basis? Yes. That means you're in the playoff when it's a 12-team playoff. That means you're legitimately competing for a national title. He can do that there. They'll take care of him financially. And the thing about Dan Lanning, and I understand why Oregon people get nervous about this, because Willie Taggart stayed there a year and then left for Florida State. Mario Cristobal was there for a very short time, and then he left for Miami. Both of those guys, though, were going home. Willie Taggart grew up in Bradenton, Florida, always dreamed of playing for or coaching at Florida State. Mario Cristobal played at Miami. He's from Miami. His family's in Miami. That made sense. Dan Lanning's from Missouri. He's not going home with any of these jobs. This is a different scenario entirely. In fact, there aren't any jobs around where he's from where you can answer yes to both of those questions. There's an SEC school, Missouri, but you're not answering yes to question 2 at Missouri. Now, they can answer yes this year, but Eli Drinkwitz has done a really good job this year. Is that going to be an every year thing? It'd be really hard to be an every year thing, given the competition they face. Oregon has been competitive since Mike Bellotti was the head coach. They were competitive under Bellotti. Chip Kelly took them to new heights. Mark Helfrich made a national title game. Mario Cristobal won the league. It's a better job right now than Texas A&M. And I know the Texas A&M people don't want to hear that, but until they get over that hump, until somebody comes in and figures out how to unlock all that potential, it's still not a better job than a place where you can be successful right now. Like going into the Big Ten, I don't know where Oregon will be predicted to finish in its first year in Big Ten play, but my guess is it's going to be 3, maybe 4. And if you win a game or 2, then you're potentially 1 or 2. That's the thing. It is a great job. And we have to start looking at things the way they're going to be starting next year. Because I think we all are guilty of this. Everything's been this way for so long. We talk about the Power 5. There's no Power 5 3 weeks from now. The Power 5 ceases to exist. Once the Pac-12 championship game gets played on that Friday night, there is no more Power 5. There's a Power 2. So every job from this point on, you have that 2-question test, and you can figure out if the person should leave or not. Am I in the Big Ten of the SEC? If the answer is yes, can I finish in the top 3 of my league on a regular basis? If the answer is yes, you stay. The answer is yes for Dan Lanning. That's why he's staying. When we come back, JD Pickell, my partner at On3, will join us. We're going to take a whip around of the 5 Power 5 conferences. Yes, I know I said it ceases to exist in 3 weeks. No more Power 5. But while we got it, we're going to enjoy it. So we're whipping around all the Power 5 conferences when we come back. 2 guys in row back. Me and JD Pickell. You know JD. He's the host of the Hard Count here at On3. I hope you're watching that every Tuesday and Thursday live. You're subscribed to the On3 YouTube channel, obviously. If you're not, what are you doing? Because you get this guy in your feed all the time. And yes, I said 2 guys wearing Rowback, the performance hoodie, the greatest garment known to man. Rowback.com, RHOBACK.com. The promo code is Staples. You get 20% off your first order. Performance hoodies, Q-zips, polos. The Performance Crew, I saw JD wearing one of those yesterday, fills it out very nicely. Also, here there might be some fleece coming from Rowback as winter approaches. So, yeah, go load up at rowback.com, RHOBACK.com. Staples is your promo code, 20% off your first order. You will be as luxurious as we are, and that's a good place to be. All right, JD, we got to talk. We're going to have a conference check-in. We're whipping around the Power 5.
Love it.
Before the Power 5 ceases to exist in about 2 weeks. This is going to be a crazy stretch run. So much going on. But let's start in the SEC where there are 2 jobs open now, which the Mississippi State one we knew was coming. The Texas A&M one, I think if you thought it through, you knew it was going to happen. But it was still one of those where you see the Jimbo Fisher fired and your mind does the tally of the $76 million buyout. And you're like, how? But what do you think happens at Texas A&M? Who are you rooting for to get that job? Who'd you like to see as the head Aggie?
You know, I think there's so many names that get thrown around with, Dan Lanning and Lane Kiffin. And to me, when I think about what A&M needs, it feels like they need more of a substance and structure hire. Not that both those guys couldn't work. It just feels like you kind of get back on the hype train, high expectations.
See, I don't think Lanning's a hype hire. I just don't think Lanning's going to leave. I think,
for sure. No,
I think because
100%.
Oregon is now a Big Ten job, and they have resources, and they have proof of concept where they've played for the national title twice in 13 years. I don't think I don't think A&M's a better job than Oregon.
No, 100%. And I mean, speaking of substance, rooted in substance, Dan Lanning. So I mean, there's definitely that box is checked. But I'm with you. I think that Dan Lanning would be tough to go away from Oregon. I think Lane Kiffin, you're kind of getting back on the hype train of high expectations. I like Mike Elko. I think he's structured. I think he's done more with less, and I think he is a differentiator in the sense that he's been at A&M.
Yeah.
And Andy, you know this, like it's a different thing you're signing up for if you go be a part of what they're doing in Bryan College Station. So I think the fact there wouldn't be this big acclamation of getting Texas A&M, I like it.
He knows it, and that's the thing. Like Texas A&M can be a shock to the system if you don't know it, if you've never worked there before, if you've never recruited in Texas before. Elko's done all that stuff, but you're right. He's done the less with more, and he's been. I think that's interesting about Elko, and I hadn't thought about it this way, but Elko came up with Dave Clawson, Bowling Green, Wake Forest, but then he goes to Notre Dame, he goes to Texas A&M, so he's been at the places where the expectations are massive and the resources are massive. Mm-hmm. So you've seen him be successful in a different job at that type of place, but then you've seen him do less with more. Duke, because the question I always have when you got someone who can do less with more, sometimes the guy who can do less with more can't do more with more.
Yep.
I think Dan Mullen's an example of that, where he was great at Mississippi State, he was good at Florida until it became clear that he wasn't capable of beating Alabama and Georgia for recruits regularly, which is a requirement if you would like to play for national titles. And so it's different. Those are different jobs. Duke's a different job than Texas A&M. So the question is, can you do more with more? I'll give you another example from Florida, though. Urban Meyer did less with more at Utah and then absolutely did more with more at Florida and at Ohio State. So that's one of those that we don't know until we see that person in the job. But I agree with you on Elko. I feel like he's a good fit there. And what we've seen him do at Duke, where their athletic profile is so much better than it was before he got there. And that's a hard place to build a team of really good athletes.
100%. I mean, another guy that I'm curious to hear your thoughts on is Chris Kleiman, because he kind of fits that same mold, but there's that bigger question mark of, okay, well, can you actually do more with more? You think you can, because, I mean, 3 stars at Kansas State and what did it at the FCS level, but that is a very different beast going to the SEC, being in College Station. Is that a fit? That'd be my number 2 if I'm A&M.
I don't know. If I'm going to go guy who's won everywhere, lower level, Leipold is the guy I would go with. And it's so funny that these two great coaches both working in the state of Kansas right now with Kleiman and Leipold. But Leipold would be my guy if I wanted to do it that way. Kleiman, it definitely feels like Kansas State and North Dakota State are fairly similar jobs, even though North Dakota State's expectations within the FCS are so much higher. Mm-hmm. But they're very developmental jobs. You got the other thing about Kleiman, and I don't think people think about this as much as they should. When you've got a quarterback, you better not leave unless it's perfect. Because Kleiman's got Avery Johnson right now at Kansas State.
Yeah.
And I think Avery Johnson could be a superstar. And so you got to be really careful leaving that behind. And obviously, if A&M's going to dump a bunch of money in your lap, you're probably going to think about that. Mm-hmm. But that's one thing. If I'm Chris Kleiman, I'm very selective because I've got my quarterback of the future. And I don't know if that's what I want to do. But that's another good one, substance over flash. I do think this is why I mentioned Sharon Moore for this job. And I do think if Harbaugh leaves, Sharon Moore would obviously be the favorite at Michigan. But what if Harbaugh stays?
Yeah.
And decides he wants to be there for a while? Like, Sharon Moore's ready to be a head coach right now. And being a good offensive line developer travels. Like, I don't care that he's not worked in the South necessarily. He played at Oklahoma. Yep. Like, he understands how all this stuff works. Like, I want someone who can develop people on the lines of scrimmage. Whether that's D-line, I don't care. I want someone who understands that. And Sharon Moore absolutely understands that. So I would do my homework if I'm Ross Bjork on him and at least inquire. Because the one thing A&M does need to think about is they don't need to get roped into a contract where they are tied to this and have to pay this massive bill. Like, the idea of hiring a coordinator is not the worst thing in the world, where you may not have to lock yourself into this massive contract. I mean, look, a coordinator of the level of Sharon Moore is going still to command a decent buyout.
For sure.
But not like Jimbo Fisher, not like a sitting head coach right now would. And before you say, well, why would you hire a coordinator? Kirby Smart was a coordinator when he got hired. Dabo Swinney was a receivers coach when he got hired. Ryan Day was a coordinator when he got hired. Guess what? They're pretty good. Lincoln Riley was a coordinator when he became a head coach.
Yep.
It's probably about the same percentage-wise.
And I think, like, the happiness around College Station with hiring a coordinator, there would be that immediate, like, really? But I think, like what you said, is on the money, the context around where that coordinator's from. Like, Sharon Moore could go be a head coach at a lot of Power 5 schools tomorrow.
If you're a good offensive line guy, and Alex Atkins at Florida State is another example of this. I don't know that Alex definitely would qualify for the A&M job, but I think he's probably getting a head coaching job after this season. Like, if you are a good developer of offensive linemen, it does not matter where you're from. It does not matter where you've recruited. You're good at offensive line. You'll figure it out.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, in the same vein, like from that coordinator hiring train of thought, there would be the immediate feel of like, really, because we can take a big swing if we're Texas A&M. We can go and throw money at the big names we talked about already in this segment in Lane Kiffin and Dan Lanning. But if you hire a coordinator from the right spot, I mean, you could strike gold, like you said, with a guy like Kirby Smart or Abba Sweeney.
All right, Mississippi State open now too. This is one where it feels like they've got some good Group of 5 head coach options, which it's been hard lately to jump from the Group of 5 to an SEC job to a Big Ten job because they tend to go for coordinators. But there's a couple like Manny Diaz, who's been their DC a couple times. He's the DC at Penn State. He's one I'd look at. Glenn Schumann, the DC at Georgia. If you're looking for that next Dan Lanning, that's one I'd look at. But I think, JD, there's a few good Group of 5 head coaches. John Summerall at Troy, Rhett Lashley at SMU. Like, those are guys you should seriously consider.
I like Jamie Chadwell. I didn't even think about Manny Diaz.
Yeah.
Jamie Chadwell makes a lot of sense to me. And just from a sheer philosophical perspective, rather, it feels like you're in the SEC. You're playing the Georgias up front. You're playing the Bamas up front, the LSU historically. Like, it feels like you need to kind of zig where other people are zagging.
Yep.
That spread option offense,
Yep.
I think that could be the answer for them.
I like that from a schematic standpoint because you become a team that becomes hard to prepare for because they use triple option concepts, but they're spread out and they attack vertically. It's actually like you go back to Tom Osborne in the mid-'90s where the triple option was Nebraska's play action, basically. That's what Liberty's doing right now.
Yeah.
Like and now would you leave Liberty after year? I don't know. And Liberty's an interesting one because they can pay way more than most schools at that level can pay. So potentially, they could offer him a sweetheart offer that makes it hard, but good SEC jobs don't open very often.
Right, yeah. But, I mean, going back to the personnel that they maybe don't have in-house at Mississippi State, that could kind of be your – I don't know what the right word would be, kind of your bridge, if you will, to being able to beat those teams. I mean, and historically, that's what they tried to do with Mike Leach when he was there. I mean, rest in peace, Mike Leach. But when they went with the air raid, that was kind of their answer.
And what they were doing defensively with Zach Arnett, that 3-3-5 is essentially like playing the triple option, except on the other side of the ball.
Yeah.
So I think you're onto something there.
We'll see. We'll get to check the tape and find out in a few weeks.
That's
few
right.
months.
Let us move to the ACC, where Florida State appears headed to an undefeated season. I think they're in good shape here. I think they're going to beat Florida. They should be able to beat Louisville. We'll see. Louisville's going to be an interesting one because they're very up and down despite being 9-1. But, what do you think happens this week, Louisville, Miami?
Yeah.
It's close, right?
We're
Spread's tight.
Thinking about it really, really hard, especially with how hard Miami pushed Florida State the week before.
Yeah.
There's kind of this thought of, well, how do you circle the wagons and did you empty the tank against your rival? But Louisville didn't look that impressive against Virginia. Now, was that some weeknight magic that Virginia's getting together?
Thursday night's a strange time.
Can never tell. I think to me it does come down to Jamari Thrash and his effectiveness for Louisville. I mean, when he's on and when they're feeding him accordingly, like one of the most explosive players in the country. And so that kind of be the differentiator. He could be their Marvin Harrison Jr. against Penn State in that game.
We've also seen Miami, now not in the Mario Cristobal era, but we have seen Miami defensively get just shredded in the run game. Like, could Jawar Jordan have a big game? And Josh Newberg brought up an interesting point on the Pick Show. Josh, who's covered Florida State for years and years, said, it tends to be when Miami loses to Florida State that it costs them a couple more games down the line. They kind of just can't mentally recover. And they did put a lot of eggs in that basket. Like, they played great against Florida State compared to how they've been playing. So we'll see. But that'll be an interesting one. The ACC needs Florida State to be undefeated.
Yeah.
Like that's how they get in the playoff.
Yeah.
And then, we'll see what happens. Clemson upswing. Did Tyler from Spartanburg save Clemson's season?
It feels like he definitely did his part. Like in terms of what you had to do as a fan calling in, he took a lot of backlash for it now. I don't know if he was trending on Twitter.
Do
he
you
was probably
believe he's
close.
a plant?
I don't buy he's a plant. I mean, I get why people would think that because he got off a full sonnet when he was doing the call-in show. And I was just like, if I'm Dabo, I'm like, are you not going to cut this guy off? I don't think he's a plant, but I think he will be remembered forever depending on how Clemson finishes this season and goes forward next season.
All right, give him a game ball, if nothing else, for the Notre Dame
Get him a T-shirt. Get him a nice little windbreaker. I always see those on the side. Those are nice.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let us move to the Big 12. Fascinating situation. in Ames. If Texas goes up there and loses, we're not even going to bother trying to figure out the tiebreakers because it's a fool's errand.
Yes.
But Jonathan Brooks tears his ACL. Texas has Quinn Ewers back, but obviously loses their best running back. C.J. Baxter will have to pick up the slack. Do you think Iowa State can pull this off?
I think they can, just for the sheer fact that it's Ames.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things where you're trying to break the game down, and we're looking at matchups and looking at scheme, and you're just like, well, this is in Ames, Iowa, so it may not matter at all. There might be something that happens.
Like, that defense will have a plan
without
for Quinn
question.
Ewers.
Without question.
Now, I still think there's a possibility that the JT Sanders, Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, A.D. Mitchell, like, it's just too much.
It's stupid, yeah.
But if they make some mistakes and that crowd stays in it, because I've been there. I was on the field when they stormed it after Oklahoma State in 2011.
That's awesome.
And I mean that crowd was hyped. It was cold.
Sure.
It's dark. Like, I don't know. It feels like they call it Hilton magic in their basketball arena. I don't know if there's Jack Trice magic, but I guess we'll find out on Saturday.
We'll find out. And it feels like, too, for Texas, like the last couple of weeks, I believe of their last 4 wins, they've won 3 of them by 1 score. And some of that you say, well, hey, Quinn Ewers wasn't playing. Totally fair. But, like, we're messing around with TCU. I'm watching that game before flipping it over to the other night game because it's actually going to be interesting at the finish. Yeah. Like, are they treading water? Was it Quinn Ewers was rusty? Like, where are we at?
It feels like Sark kind of just pulled back on the reins a little bit and was like, we're good.
We're hoping. We're hoping for things at Texas.
They were 26-6, though.
Yeah.
And, like, I keep waiting for Texas to just blow somebody out. And they did that against Kansas. But they didn't against Kansas State. Obviously, they were the backup quarterback. But they didn't against TCU. Like,
and against Houston. And same situation, kind of got back into the game with Quinn Ewers getting hurt. Yeah.
Got to see it. Pac-12 is really interesting this week.
Yeah.
My goodness, there's so many, like, even that Friday night game with Colorado, Washington State, like losers of 6 in a row versus losers of 5 of 6. Coach Prime trying to grab a win. Jake Dickert, goes from being one of the hottest coaches in the country to now he can't figure out, like, they've lost the last 2 games by 3. One was 10-7, one was 42-39. Like, none of that makes sense. You think Coach Prime gets another win this season?
I don't. Just because of the sheer fact of, and we had this thought too, even during the season, like, hey, this team, they're hot, they're 3-0, vibes are high, but it's also a completely new roster. What happens when they start losing? And I don't know that it's a thing where one loss has led to the next, but it's starting to feel like once that thing gets moving a certain direction with a bunch of guys that didn't know each other before the season, you wonder where they're competitively at. And so Washington State, I mean, kind of in that same situation. If I'm coming down to picking this one, I just think the line of scrimmage for Washington State is probably better than what Colorado has, which isn't saying a ton, but I think that's the difference.
So Washington, Oregon State, another very interesting game. Big one at Reser. But I want to go a little somewhere else in the conference. Not a game necessarily. UCLA, getting the vibes that Chip Kelly may be in trouble there. And you think about it, you're like, okay, well, but they kept extending him. But the idea that they're going into the Big Ten feels like if you're going to press a reset button, maybe this is the time you press it.
Yeah, and it's funny because, like you said, like there's nothing from the outside looking into the house noticeably wrong. Like you look at the record, like, hey, they're 6-4. The quarterback plays kind of dicey.
I will say that Arizona State result was one of the most shocking ones this season.
Sure,
where you see the score and you're like, huh?
Sure, definitely. And Chip Kelly, a guy who specialized in offense, for that to be the result. But no, when I look at UCLA, I think, like you said, it's 100% true. Moving into a conference where one, you're gonna have to be better than the line of scrimmage, and UCLA has some ground to make up.
Really good pass rushers there, but
good pass rushers.
O-line is not what they thought it was going to be this year.
And you got to acquire talent. And Chip Kelly, for all the things that he's phenomenal at, recruiting isn't necessarily like right in his wheelhouse.
Like if they had like those Jim Mora era rosters, coached a little bit differently, like that's a team that can compete in the Big Ten.
Absolutely. Josh Rosen when he was wrong, Jaleel Wadood playing safety. They had some guys.
Oh yeah,
Anthony Barr.
Yeah,
they had some guys.
Jack. Like
that's a throwback.
They
Miles
had
Jack.
some dudes. On those rosters.
Yeah.
And he would, like Jalen Phillips, when he signed there, was a massive recruit. Like, they just have not done that under Chip Kelly. But you knew that. Like, Chip Kelly had a choice between the UCLA and the Florida jobs. And I think wisely took UCLA because he knew he was not going to be expected to bring in the 5-star talent. But that was before the conference move. Like, if you got to play Ohio State and Michigan and Penn State, and oh, by the way, still have to play Washington and USC and Oregon, you better have some dudes on your team.
Especially in a state that's so talent rich in California. I mean, the Trinity League's right there. I'm not saying it's Florida or Texas, but by nature of how much talent you have access to, it's like, hey,
they're the most populated state in the country.
You don't got to get on the jet. Yeah,
exactly.
You can get in the car, go down 55 South, and be in good shape to go find some good talent.
Yeah, so that's going to be a fascinating one to watch. That game with USC will be interesting because, look, USC's trending in the wrong direction as well, but they're going to hire a new defensive coordinator. We'll see if Lincoln Riley can get things going on the recruiting trail. But the Pac-12 in general is, in its final 3 weeks, nothing but storylines.
So awesome.
It's crazy.
So awesome. Like throwing a party in the house before you sell it. That's what they're doing this year. It's the way it feels.
The party may be in Corvallis this week. Who knows?
Yes.
We'll see. That they're actually Oregon State's favored in that game. At this, as we're recording this, they're favored. That may flip again, but just wild. All right, let's go to the Big Ten.
Love it.
Where if we're talking crazy, interesting, there's a court hearing that will determine who will coach on the sidelines against Maryland. Will it be Sharon Moore or will it be Jim Harbaugh? Who you got? Do you know this Timothy Connors? Do you know his history?
What's the line? Is there any betting odds on Harbaugh being on the sideline?
What's interesting is, so Connors was assigned the case originally, and then there was another judge that picked it up. And that judge had presided over the Connor Stallions versus the HOA case.
Wow.
But then she wasn't going to. Connors took it back. So I love this, that everybody's like, well, what cases is he trying? How does he trend? Who's he lean toward?
It's like an episode of Suits, is what it feels like.
It's the best episode of Suits, JD. I'm glad you said that. I've been working my way back through the seasons.
Yeah, I haven't finished it yet. So I'm
I watched
season
it when
6.
it came out originally. I was a big USA Network Blue Skies guy. Can't wait until next summer when everybody discovers Royal Pains.
Yeah, or Psych. Or Monk.
Psych's been out there.
Yeah.
I don't know. The people didn't pick up on Psych, but I'm telling you, they're going to love Royal Pains. But yes, this is the best episode of Suits. This would have been an entire season-long arc of Suits.
For sure.
Lewis Litt and Jim Harbaugh would have gotten along famously.
Like that?
Lewis Litt and Harvey would have had to form a grudging alliance because Harvey would need Lewis to communicate with Jim Harbaugh.
And Mike Ross would have probably had a heart for Connor Stallions.
Oh, Mike Ross and Connor Stallions would have been peas in a pod.
Awesome. Would have been awesome.
Yeah, that's been your Suits review.
There we go.
If you haven't been rewatching Suits on Netflix, you don't know what you're missing.
There we go.
But I don't think it matters who coaches Michigan in this game. I think they're going to beat the doors off of Maryland. But this has been a weird spot in past years for Ohio. I do find it interesting that the league decided to put Michigan in this spot instead of Ohio State with the at Maryland look-ahead game going into that game.
Just sprinkled it right in there. And because Ohio State, like you said, last year they were in College Park. And it came down to the very end. And then, Michigan in this same spot a season ago against Illinois, they kind of struggled. Now, Illinois was a bit better and matched up much better than Maryland. But no, I think 100%. If Maryland... Maybe they wake up that day, dangerous man with nothing to lose. You never know. So I still think Michigan rolls, though, to be clear.
You think Iowa's going to win the West? I feel like they've reasserted their dominance in the West.
Feels like it. It's one of those things where it's like, what is going on over there? It's kind of like the Pac-12, like the last year of that side of the conference, and they're just doing backflips and somersaults and not scoring touchdowns and hitting unders. Like it's a total inverse of what you see in the Pac-12 with a ton of points, and it's awesome. I love it.
I just feel like Iowa and Minnesota are sitting there going, we gotta make this count, and Illinois as well. We gotta make this count because next year Oregon's coming in, USC's coming in, We're getting pushed down the stack.
Feels like Nebraska if you had been able to somehow, some way get Matt Rule a year earlier.
Oh, yeah.
And you build for that second year.
I think Nebraska's going to be fine. They do need to win this week. Yep. They need to beat Wisconsin, which is not having a great couple weeks. Because Nebraska needs to get bowl eligible.
Yep.
And I'm not sure I like them to get bowl eligible against Iowa. No. Even though they won with an interim staff last year against the Hawkeyes. They need to win this week and get that number 6.
Yeah, without question. If you can do that in your first year from Matt Rule, historically, his first year has been awful.
Right.
And because he's taken over such rebuilds at Temple and at Baylor, and those programs were in very different spots. And so if you're Nebraska and you get bowl eligible, I think you feel very validated of the last couple of years with preseason hype around the Scott Frost era. Hey, we got the guys. We just needed the right driver of this whole thing.
JD, appreciate it. Tons of storylines everywhere around the country. We have just taken you from coast to coast in like 25 minutes.
Yep. And walk through Suits.
Watch through Suits. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Again, I really do think if you want to reboot the show, capitalize on the popularity from the Netflix bump that it's gotten. You reboot the show with a season where they defend Michigan in the sign stealing case. I don't know that you can get Meghan Markle now. She's royalty. She's probably pretty expensive. So,
Tough get.
So Rachel Zane probably not back. But everybody else, like the guy who played Lewis had a great bit part on Billions, but Billions is done. It's time to bring those people home. You
need A&M or Jimbo Fisher to fit the bill to get a reboot going. And then we can get Meghan Markle in too.
Do you think, well, is Jimbo Fisher funding it because he's just rich now?
Or I think either one.
Is he a client?
We might have to do 2 seasons of a reboot.
Yeah, I think so. So Jimbo Fisher uses his buyout money to increase his stake in cattle farming.
Perfect.
And then, some corporate raider comes in trying to buy him out of his cattle farms, or maybe he's trying to poison his cattle. And Jimbo Fisher hires, Pearson Spector Lit to take care of it.
I'm so in. Oh, done. That would do ridiculous numbers. Like talking about reboot, that you're all the way back at that point.
I don't know if is Netflix going to make it an original? Whoever does it, whatever production company, we are available. We'll write your scripts for you. Talk to you soon. When we return, Paul Jones of Maroon and White Daily on 3's Mississippi State site will join us to talk about the Bulldogs job opening. Could Dan Mullen be a candidate to come back? Will they go for a Power 5 head coach? Will it be a Group of 5 head coach? Lots of options for the Bulldogs. We welcome Paul Jones of Maroon and White Daily on 3's Mississippi State site. And Paul, you got a coaching search to cover. It's an interesting one because Mississippi State in a strange situation. They let go of Zach Arnett after less than a season, but obviously his was kind of an extended interim after the passing of Mike Leach. It feels like there's quite a few good sitting head coach options for them, plus a former successful Mississippi State head coach just sitting out there on TV. What do you think is going to happen here in the next few weeks?
Obviously, you can, whether they got rid of Zach Arnett Monday or after the Egg Bowl, you can still make talks with agents. You can still do the behind-the-scenes stuff. So I don't think that really – maybe it moves up the timeline a little bit. But, I have a feeling that Zach Selman wants to find some stability. Like I said, this program is looking for its 5th new head coach since 2017. And, to me, that kind of points to him trying to find a sitting Power 5 head coach. He mentioned on Monday, Zach Selman said he's keeping an open mind. Young, old coordinator, sitting P5 coach, G5 coach. He wants to keep an open mind. But, I feel like he's going to go after some big fish early on and see how that plays out. But obviously in this day and age with the transfer portal, December signing period, we're probably looking at a 2-week process here before they get somebody in here.
Yeah, Zach Selman, former Joe Castiglione lieutenant at Oklahoma. Joe, his history is defensive coordinator Bob Stoops, offensive coordinator Lincoln Riley, defensive coordinator Brent Venables. But it's interesting because you and I were talking before we started recording, and we've both talked to a bunch of people, and it does seem like the group of sitting head coaches would be the one that Zach Selman may go for first here.
I agree. And, this is a program that obviously you're in the SEC. This is a program that you're fixing to welcome Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC. And, I think that's why he kind of pulled the plug early on Coach Arnett, because you can't sit around and wait while your rival is looking at a 10-2 season and possible New Year's Day Bowl. You got, like I said, Texas, Oklahoma coming in. This is a program that, and of course, let's be fair here. Zach Arnett was thrown into almost an impossible situation. I mean, this could be a program where, if Coach Leach doesn't tragically pass away, is, winding down another 8-9 win season, another solid bowl game. But, I think they knew going in, especially when you look at the way they structured Zach's contract, that they knew this is probably going to be a trial basis and see how it goes. And if it doesn't work out, hey, let's move on to something else pretty quick. So, I think Zach knows football drives it here in Mississippi State, like he does at any SEC school. And you're going to have to get some stability. And I think he wants a proven Power 5 head coach in here.
So I had Lance Leipold on my hot board. He's one of those that's kind of on everybody's mind because of the turnaround at Kansas. One I thought that was interesting that you had on your list was Gus Malzahn, because, I thought about that earlier today. Like, Gus is at UCF. He seems happy. They're in the Big 12 now, but a chance to get back in the SEC doesn't, I would imagine that would intrigue him.
I do. And if you just being completely honest here, I think if he does get back in the SEC, I would think Arkansas would probably be the more likely scenario. Obviously, they made some talks with Gus before they hired Sam Pittman, and that was a situation where, he didn't want to make the move then, but, things could change by now.
Yeah. What's the cat's name, by the way?
Nah, he doesn't know.
For those listening in podcast form, Paul's cat is just
That's
a
my
ham.
secret source.
That's right. Is a ham. Just wants to be on camera at all times. So Paul, some group of 5 guys I know would really want the job. You got John Summerall at Troy. You got Rhett Lashley at SMU. Jamie Chadwell at Liberty's another one that I think would probably be really interested. What's the chances that those guys get any traction?
I think Chadwell is very intriguing. I know there's been rumors of, obviously he's paid well at Liberty.
Yeah.
That surprises some people, but Liberty's got money, and you don't know the exact terms of his buyout. And, I think I think Rhett Lashley's a very attractive candidate too. And I think if this was previously 2 years ago, that he may be my odds-on favorite to get the job. But now you look at SMU, we know they got a ton of money, and they're fixing to go to the ACC. If that wasn't a factor, then I think he may be odds-on favorite to make that move. Obviously, he's familiar with the SEC and had success here. But, I think to me, Chadwell is very, very intriguing.
Yeah, he's won everywhere he's been, wants to stay in the South, but he's never coached the Power 5 level, and he's never had to recruit as an assistant at the Power 5 level. I think that's really been the knock. But I don't know. I'm of the mind that if you win in a bunch of places, you can probably win anywhere, that's Lance Leipold at Kansas, it's Willie Fritz at Tulane. Like, there's a few guys out there like that.
I agree. And it's such a different, Andy, you've been around the SEC. Man, it's such a different animal. It's such a different mindset. And I've seen some coaches come in here that I thought would be successful just get chewed up. It's so competitive, and it's a 24/7 deal, and it's just a situation where coaches that I thought were really good coaches and had a very good chance of succeeding just get chewed up and spit out. But I think Chadwell, that is a negative that he hasn't been in the Power 5, but I think you have to look at his success and what he's done at that level.
Well, and I also think the Mississippi State job and the Ole Miss job are different from the other SEC jobs at the same level, because we're not talking about Alabama or LSU, or those are different kind of jobs. But all the jobs in the SEC at that level, Mississippi State and Ole Miss, you can get more talent than the other ones because of the JUCO system, because of just the way people tend to still be under recruited sometimes in the state of Mississippi.
Exactly.
I just think, because I go back to when Dan Mullen was there. Think of the level of talent that he was able to either develop or acquire. Fletcher Cox, who was one of the best defensive linemen in the country when he was playing at Mississippi State. When Dan left and Joe Moorhead took over, there are 3 first-rounders sitting on that defense. That's what makes this so intriguing to me, is that you can have first-round level talent, whereas a lot of other places you can't, unless you're at Alabama or LSU or Georgia.
I think you got to have a good mixture too, Andy. I think, and this is where Dan was really good at his job with the evaluation process. You know, there's going to be guys in Mississippi. You just mentioned a couple, but you look at this year's cycle, it's no different. There's going to be guys you have to fight for. NIL is going to be a big factor with a lot of these guys, but you also have to be able to evaluate and project where those low 3 stars can, that's where Dan was so good at his job. He could take a low 3-star that probably played quarterback, look at Bernardra McKinney and turn him into an All-American linebacker, to be able to project like that and evaluate, because you said it right. Mississippi kids are very undervalued because they haven't come close to reaching their peak yet, because of, they don't have big coaching staffs, not a good weight room, play every sport under the sun in Mississippi. So when those kids get to college, you're getting a raw product, but the ceiling is so high with those guys.
Well, let's talk about Dan, because he's sitting there on ESPN right now. He's really good on TV. He's obviously still, he got a buyout from Florida, but he was really successful in 9 years at Mississippi State. I've always argued that he kind of spoiled State fans because they started to think what he was doing there was normal. And it was probably the best job anybody's done there. Do you think he might entertain the possibility of coming back? Do you think Zach Selman might entertain the possibility of bringing him back?
I'm not sure if it gets to serious talks with Dan. Obviously people change their minds, especially when you've been out of the game. But I've always been under the impression, and this goes back to my talks with Dan when he was here, that he's probably done with coaching. And he told us often, even on the record, off the record, when he was here, that he didn't want to coach much past his early 50s. He wanted to be with his kids, follow their dreams with sports. I know his son's a very avid golfer, and he's very involved with that. Outside of getting fired from Florida, what he told us a few years ago is exactly the path that he has taken and has been out of college football. And, I wonder if Dan has that competitive fire to be in the new NIL world, because the knock against Dan was his recruiting. Evaluation and all that, man, he was one of the best. But when it comes to the NIL era, I just wonder if he has the hunger for that.
Well, and that was my question with him as well, because I don't think at Mississippi State you're expected to do what you're expected to do at Florida. Like Florida, for the coach to be successful, you've got to be beating Georgia and Alabama for players regularly. And Dan wasn't doing that. Billy Napier's not winning games, but he is occasionally doing that on the recruiting trail. I just don't know. You don't have to do that at Mississippi State. It's not a requirement of the job. So, but you're right. The ferocity of the NIL battles between Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Arkansas, LSU will be involved in some of that too. Auburn, it is going to be pretty tough.
I agree, and to me that was the biggest hang up, and along those lines, is Dan going to bring back his normal staff that he had with him in Mississippi State and Florida, his buddies, or is he going to be, this is all speculation, but if he did get back into it, is he going to go get an aggressive recruiting staff, guys that are accustomed to NIL and fighting in the streets for these guys? So, I think it's going to be a lot of people talking about that. And, I'm sure Dan loves the attention and people wondering if he's going to get back into coaching or not. But to me, it would be a complete shock if he does coach again.
Well, his on-air partner, Matt Berry at ESPN, tweeted at me on Monday saying that they can't have him unless Matt can be the chief of staff. So that might be the deal breaker there. So what are we talking about in terms of timeline? Obviously, the Bulldogs finished their season on Thanksgiving in the Egg Bowl. Like you said, it's a tough spot for them to be watching Ole Miss have such a good year for the second year in a row. And that's what they're trying to catch up to. When do you think that new person's in place?
If I had to throw a timeline on it, Andy, I would probably say by the 1st of December at the latest. You've got official visitors still scheduled to come in here the first weekend of December. I don't think in this day and age you can forfeit a weekend of official visitors, especially since you only have a couple weekends in December before the signing period comes. And a problem with Mississippi is we have the Mississippi Alabama All-Star game the third weekend of December. So that takes out a lot of kids in your recruiting footprint that can't come that weekend. The interesting thing too, Andy, and this, you've got guys on this recruiting staff here that have been here since Mullen was here originally. That part don't always change. It's kind of different than college basketball where everybody's completely different. Some of these recruiting staff members stay through coaching changes, so they're going to be doing all of that. But you've got to get those certain people in here.
All right, Paul, thank you so much, and good luck covering that coaching search.
Appreciate it, man.
We go from a school with a lot of head coach options to one that definitely has its head coach locked in for a long time, whether the fan base is happy about that or not. But now Penn State is looking for an offensive coordinator. Sean Fitz of On3's Blue and White Illustrated joins us to discuss what happens next with the Nittany Lions after firing Mike Yurcich. We welcome Sean Fitz from Blue White Illustrated, On3's Penn State site. It's been a busy week for you, Sean. Penn State loses to Michigan. James Franklin fires offensive coordinator Mike Yurcich on Sunday. And I got to ask you, because I was at the game, and I have never heard fans of a good team boo the offensive play calling in the first quarter of a big game until Saturday.
Yeah, I mean that is the first quarter of a big game, the second of two big games with Ohio State and Michigan, and Ted Lasso season 1 season finale. It's the hope that kills you. Penn State fans had hope that this was the team that was going to get them over the hump, and I think they matched up well with Ohio State. And if they had a semblance of an offense, you never know what's going to happen there, and they didn't. And this is kind of where they found themselves in the first quarter on Saturday. No points. The points are what gives you hope. You can lose a game 45-38 and you still feel like you're just one or two plays away. Against Michigan, against Ohio State, you never thought, even when it was a 4-point game for most of that Ohio State game, you still felt like the little brother who's being held at arm's length when the big brother just kind of gets him and just sort of has their way with him in a fight. Like that's kind of where you're at with that if you're a Penn State fan. And to see the lack of continuity, to see the lack of, I've been saying purpose for a couple of weeks now, it wasn't there. And it settled on Mike Yurcich because that's the guy that got fired, but it starts at the top of James Franklin. Yurcich, certainly the way that they're playing the call, or the way that they're calling the game was not something that gave people much. They've seen that before, if that makes sense. And then beyond that, the execution from the player level, I mean, there's a lot of blame to go around that offensive side of the ball.
Yeah, the 3 and outs are incredibly frustrating. But the thing that I noticed is sort of mid-game, they'd have a nice, successful play on first down. Like there was a sequence where they gained 9 yards on first down, lose 1 on second, get none on third, punt, and then the next one was actually the touchdown drive, but they had to convert 2 fourth downs because they were so bad on second and third down. And it's like, I don't know, it felt like a little bit of a lack of creativity. Like instead of on second and 1, that's where you cut it loose because what do you have to lose? They're like, no, we're going to try to get that 1 yard. And Michigan was like, okay, we're not letting you get that 1 yard.
You're going to try and get that 1 yard by throwing a, little banana there to the sideline. And like your horizontal approach is going to give the defense time to make that tackle for loss is what it ended up being, to a receiver who I think has caught 1 ball this year. So like there's just so many things. It's like, you talk about 4D chess and things like that, and you're just completely off the board trying to outsmart the other guy. And I mean, that's a pretty smart defensive coordinator on the other side. But it's a situation that we had and I just talked about this on our show at Blue White Illustrated. There was an exchange here where in our in-game thread, that exact sequence happened. And some guy is mad, says, well, that's so predictable. And someone came back, no, it's not. It's not predictable. And that's the problem. It's so far gone and not in a situation where you're catching the other person off guard. You're doing something that isn't going to work.
Jesse Mentor, the Michigan defensive coordinator, is like, thank you for that. Because on second and 1, The playbook is wide open. You can do literally anything, and that is the worst thing you can possibly do.
I mean, it's just unbelievable. And you saw that with the 2-point conversion there at the end, where you're running a swinging gate, muddle huddle, whatever you want to call it. Uh, who are you trying to outsmart? Who do you feel that you are so deficient in your offense that you have to go with this? You have to go with the trick play. Penn State has gone to a lot of trick plays this year, halfback option passes. They threw a throwback to Drew Aller this week on 4th down. Like that is, to me, that's coaching scared. Like, to me, that is acting like you don't think that you have the horses to do it. And maybe you don't have the weapons on the outside to get it done. But at the same time, like, if you're in that situation where you think you need a trick play in the second quarter or a flea flicker in the third quarter to just get a limited amount of points, then you're kind of already there, right?
Yeah. Well, and if you look at the other side of the coin in that game, you have a team that ran the ball 32 consecutive times. Like it's funny because I have this conversation with coaches, and there are a few that will do this, and the Jim Harbaugh tree is certainly, they all do this, but not many coaches actually do this, where they just keep running the thing that works until you stop it.
And what's interesting about that is they weren't running extremely well. They averaged 3.6 yards a carry, 13 plays in the third quarter, 47 yards, one of 3 on third down. I mean, that's not that is not a killer offense by any stretch of the imagination. 17 plays, 70 yards, 4.1 yards per carry, but that included a 30-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter. So you ran 30 plays for 117 yards in the second half. I mean, they did it because they could just keep them at arm's length. This is Kirk Ferentz taking a safety in a 6-4 game because he's not scared of Penn State's offense. He's not. You're not scared of that. How many times do you see Michigan go down and play for a field goal as they did, in the second half in the third quarter there? How many times do you see them go down and essentially play for a field goal because you think, if you're winning by 8 or we're winning by 7 or whatever it was at that point, if you're winning by one score,
from 5 to 8 with the field goal,
you have an extreme advantage. And I think that that's the frustrating part. If you're James Franklin, if you're Manny Diaz, who is kind of on the hook for that whole they didn't throw in the second half thing, but at the same time, your defense wasn't bad. Like, it wasn't a situation where you were just getting crumbled like you did in 2022 at the Big House. So it was a fascinating game just because Michigan was not scared of Penn State's offense.
Yeah, and what they did also is, you have a quarterback who's not in rhythm. What's the best way to keep him out of rhythm? Don't let him have the ball. And they were it wasn't even because they were, running as successfully as you mentioned. They were taking so much time, not just time of game, but actually physical time where he had to stand there on the sideline.
Yeah, it was an incredible. I thought that game was under 3 hours, and it should have been without TV timeouts because you were there on Saturday. I mean, you're going from touchdown, timeout, kickoff, timeout, guy gets hurt, time. I mean, it was unbelievable how they got.
It was a big noon game that ended before all the other games that kicked off before it.
And it was artificially inflated in terms of game time because of the TV stuff. And it was, it was a service academy game is what it was. And, credit to Michigan for coming out and doing exactly what they thought they would do. But I mean, they were 3 of 8 on third downs in the second half. So yes, they did a little bit of stay on the field, but that's a team that was 55% on third downs for the season. They didn't live up to their standard and their expectation from there. It's just, without being threatened on the other side, how do you approach this?
So Jaywan Sider, Ty Howell take over the play calling. They were the co-offensive coordinators under Yursich. Do you expect to see anything different these last couple of games? They're playing a pretty good defense in Rutgers this week.
Yeah, Rutgers does have a good defense. I think kind of the flip side of what we just saw with Michigan is I don't know that Penn State fears Rutgers scoring a ton of points, but you never know what can happen. It's November in the Big Ten. I mean, it's a situation where you're not going to change the offense in 2 weeks or whatever they have. They've got Rutgers and then Michigan State next Friday at Ford Field. But I think you feel like they made this move because you just got to get a jump start on the next guy, obviously, but also because these next 2 defenses you play are not going to threaten you in the sense that Michigan or Ohio State are going to. So I expect more of the same, but you've got a running backs coach calling the plays. You've got a tight ends coach calling the plays. Penn State has good tight ends. We think they have good running backs. They haven't played up to what we believe to be their potential. And actually, to be honest, what we saw from them last year. So I think a lot of running, a lot of November Big Ten football coming your way with running backs and tight ends and things like that, because Penn State, I just don't know that they have the option to kill you on the outside. And you haven't seen it, but I do expect them to try and get Drew Aller into a rhythm, try and do some short throws to start the game, make him a little bit more comfortable, and then maybe give him a little bit of a longer leash. He saw against Maryland 2 weeks ago, they scored 51 points, and he was a big part, like his comfort level. That was a big part of why why they were able to have success on offense. Not that they fixed anything, but at the same time, it was more enjoyable to watch from a coverage standpoint, from a fan standpoint, from just basically anybody around that game outside of Mike Loxley. It was more fun to watch that Penn State team than the two that played the big games and laid eggs in the big games.
So as they move into the new Big Ten, where you add UCLA and USC and Washington and Oregon, you take away divisions, what kind of offensive coordinator should they be looking for that conference?
It's going to be fascinating to watch the Pac-12 teams and the style that they play, because they're not going to change in the first year. Like how they score points and how they're able to, you want to say no defense or whatever, but it's going to be a different formula than the traditional Big Ten teams. So you've got to keep it open. You've got to. I'm not saying you have to recruit an offensive coordinator around Drew Aller, but this is your guy that you're trying to figure out, or you're trying to vault your own program as a quarterback producer, a quarterback recruiter, things like that. So this guy means a great deal to what they're trying to do. But I don't know. Penn State's identity, I think, is always going to be running the football. But that's not necessarily how they've scored their points over the last decade. You look back to when Joe Moorhead was here, there was a great deal of success and balance. There was a great deal of that. And James Franklin wants to be balanced. He wants to run the quarterback, but I don't think it's a be all end all thing. So yeah, I don't know. I looked at a bunch of, if you would call them potential candidates or possibilities, if you will, and you could go a number of different ways with this. The problem that I see is you're not going to fix the deficiencies that you have on the outside just in one round of portal or in one round of recruiting. Like Penn State still has a lot of issues on the outside, so can't go to a spread them out air raid or something like that. I know Wisconsin's had their issues this year with a similar change. So they
didn't have the personnel to run it.
Right. And you can't just flip that. I mean, I know it sounds great, but you can't go out and sign a free agent here.
Well, yeah. And now, interestingly enough, Joe Moorhead's a short drive away in Akron. Penn State can probably pay him more than Akron does, but I guess that's just a matter of, do you want to still be a head coach, or do you want to go back to being a coordinator?
Yeah, I mean, and Akron's very tough place to win, and he has not really done much of it. And I think that's a tough place for anybody that is trying to win football games. But yeah, Moorhead makes sense. Like Moorhead makes sense in the sense that he could be he's one of the guys that we highlighted as a possibility on Blue Wade Illustrated. He's one of the guys that you just keep hearing that name come up because, in part because he has shown production. He has done a pretty good job, but also harkens on the glory days of 2016 when you win a Big Ten title with him. I mean, that was the one guy that was able to get them over the hump to play Ohio State well. He beat Ohio State when he was at Oregon, if you want to give him the credit for that, you want to give somebody, I don't know, but the result is the result there. So there's some familiarity there. And I think my biggest thing with Moorhead is when he came in 2016, he said, "Hey, I got the offense. Just let me take care of it." And I think that is exactly what they need. They need a head coach of the offense. I think Manny Diaz does a really good job of that on the defensive side of the ball, and it's worked for them. So you have James do his thing, his CEO thing, and you've got two head coaches that can make it work, one on offense, one on defense. All of a sudden, you've got a formula for a team that can maybe get over that hump. You never know. Divisions are going away, schedules changing, but with that 12-team playoff, you get a little bit more leeway there.
So I was driving back to my hotel after the game, Sean, and I stop at a sports bar to watch some of the other games and get something to eat. And I'm sitting there at the bar, and there's a guy across the bar from me. He's wearing his Penn State jersey, and I hear him say this. And I'm curious how many of your subscribers are saying this right now, because it shocked me to hear it. And the more I thought about it, I was like, yeah, I kind of get it. He said, "I'd give anything to have Sean Clifford back right now."
Wow. That's go back a year and say that and see what Penn State fans say. Sean was so good at getting everybody in the right place. Like Sean would go up to the line and he had that level of trust. He was a 4th-year starter. He was a guy that, I don't want to say have that ESP, but he was able to know what the coordinator was thinking, know what the coach was thinking, know what the defensive coordinator was thinking, because he'd seen all of it. And you were that comfortable with it, and you were that, comfortable with making him, even though sometimes the throws did not go where he wanted the throws to go, he still put them in the right general area, and like he made the right reads and did all that kind of stuff. So yes, Drew's more talented. Like there's you can see some of the throws he makes. Sean is like classically underappreciated because of the way that most of his, like, just because he was here so long.
Yeah.
But I think it's more the trust thing. It's more the pre-snap thing. It's more of the getting guys in spots and not being confused. And like, there's a lot of dummy calls that have gone, pre-snap for Penn State this year just to confuse a first-year quarterback. That's what everybody does against first-year quarterbacks. And Penn State has fallen into that trap just because they didn't have the guy to think on the fly. And that's not a cut at Drew, but he just hasn't seen it as much.
And it's interesting because it highlights how hard it is to find the right quarterback or to develop the right quarterback. Because Drew Aller, during the recruiting process, everybody wanted him. He has all of the physical tools that you could possibly want. And like, Clifford was an example of a guy who got things done. But you think about the most successful Penn State quarterback in the last 20 years is Trace McSorley, who was a guy that James Franklin was recruiting at Vanderbilt. And he came with, like, sometimes you just don't know.
You don't. And the threat of the quarterback run has been so good to Penn State. Like not so much the actual quarterback run, but the threat that this guy is going to take off. Drew scored Penn State's first touchdown with a quarterback draw that just was kind of like, he was zigzagging.
I think everybody in the stadium knew it was coming, and Michigan couldn't stop it.
Yeah, and it's not like he can't run. We've seen guys that can't run. He can do a little bit of it, and he did more of it on Saturday. And that's the sort of thing that can open up your offense. But when you're not scared of that, your defense has an 11-on-10 advantage there. So that has been so good to Penn State over the years. Clifford, underrated athletically, able to pull the ball down and take some hits and things like that, and taking a few too many hits at times. But with him, with McSorley, it was so much different than with Aller and with Hackenberg, because that's the way that I think they were comfortable calling the game.
So where is the fan base mentally right now? The plateau is what it is. It's been this way since 2017. The change is structural coming next year. And it feels like maybe that's the difference they need. Maybe that makes things feel a little different. But I imagine it's pretty frustrating. It's basically Groundhog Day.
I don't think they're there yet. Like, I don't think the fan base is there yet. I don't think they're thinking about the difference in schedules. I think they're thinking that, hey, Penn State has not done well against Ohio State and Michigan, and those are the standards. And, even with the other teams coming in, they're going to continue to be the standard because that's what we've known for so long in the Big Ten. So, like, I don't think they're quite there with ready to get over that hump because, James Franklin's record in big games is what it is. It's not changing. It's not, you're not going to get an opportunity. If you go to the Peach Bowl and play Tulane, you're not going to get credit for that win, just as he didn't against Memphis a couple of years ago in the Cotton Bowl. Like, it's a situation where you're just continually trying to nip at the heels, and you're just not getting where you want to be, and that's all going to fall on the guy that's making $9 million. And there's plenty of blame to go around, but it's going to start with that guy, and you can't blame Penn State fans for just sort of being in that mindset.
And it ain't Texas A&M. He's not getting that buyout, so
he is not.
He's got to figure it out.
65 million-ish, I think, is where they're at right now. Penn State does not have that oil money. They've got some natural gas money up north, but I don't think that's coming in to buy out a head coach.
Exactly. Sean Fitz, thank you so much.
It's my pleasure, Andy. Thank you for having me on. We're glad we got you to town this weekend.
Oh, well, hey, before I don't know if I'm messing with any of your sponsors, but Barrel 21.
Yes.
Was always one of my favorite places, but I had the poutine there on Friday night. Holy bone marrow gravy on fries with flash fried steak. Oh
man,
unbelievable!
How about it? And the folks at Otto's do a fantastic job. They that's their distillery there. But I've been going to Otto's since forever, man. They just they know how to do it.
Well, that's the thing. So if you're going to a game at Penn State, you get off the interstate on Atherton. And it's right there. You have Otto's, which is a giant sports bar. They brew their own beer. And you have Barrel 21, which is a little more kind of elevated bar food. And they also distill their own bourbon and rye. The Rock and Rye, if you get a chance to try that, try it. It is spectacular.
All right, I'll take your word for it. We're not really famous for the bourbons and the ryes up here in central Pennsylvania, but they do a good job, and I agree. Some of the best mixed drinks I've had have been in there. They do a terrific job.
And that has been traveling to State College, because I think people think, oh, it's in the middle of nowhere, there's nothing there. No. They'll take care of you.
All right. Well, I'm glad we took care of you this weekend. We're glad to get you on campus. I'm sorry to watch that offensive output, but that's kind of where we're at with covering this team.
That's okay. There's always creamery ice cream, and that's always a win. So thank you, Sean.
All right, thanks.
That's it for the show. Thank you so much for joining us. Remember, Wednesday is a Dear Andy episode. Get those questions in. You can find me on X at Andy_Staples, on Instagram at Andy_Staples, or you can email your question, AndyStaplesOn3@gmail.com. I look forward to them. You always ask the most wonderful questions, help drive the conversation on this show. I always tell people we have the smartest, best-looking listeners, viewers in the world, and you show that every single week when you ask those questions. So get them in there, and we'll talk about it tomorrow night.